Hands where I can see them! Now! The shout cracked through the morning air like a gunshot. Judge Jeremiah Coleman froze on the marble steps of his own courthouse, his black briefcase slipping from his grasp and landing with a hollow thud. The officer's voice came again, sharp, trembling with rage. I said down, "Now!" before he could even reply. A hand struck his face so hard that his glasses flew across the granite. The blow wasn't just physical. It was centuries of pain echoing through that single slap. For a moment, time stopped on those courthouse steps in Memphis, the same city where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had fallen. The world was about to watch history twist again, right where justice was supposed to live. Before we go into this story, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, because this one will shake you. It was a crisp October morning, sunlight just beginning to rise over the U.S. District Courthouse. Judge Jeremiah Coleman, 52 years old, had walked these same steps every weekday for more than a decade. The marble beneath his shoes still gleamed with the weight of history. He'd always thought of it as sacred ground. In his left hand, he carried a worn black leather briefcase, edges cracked from years of service, and inside were rulings, motions, and his engraved gavel, words carved in silver, "Truth prevails." But that morning, truth was about to be tested in a way he could never have imagined. From behind one of the granite pillars, Officer Lauren Mitchell watched him approach. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her taser as her eyes locked onto his face. To her, he wasn't a judge, just another black man in a dark suit walking too confidently toward a restricted area. Trauma had twisted her judgment long ago, years earlier. Her younger brother had been killed during a robbery by two black men, and that wound had never healed. The pain had hardened into hatred, and the badge on her chest became her shield to justify it. "Where do you think you're going?" she barked, stepping directly into Jeremiah's path. He stopped, startled by her aggression. "Excuse me, officer, I work here." He reached into his coat, slowly, carefully, and pulled out his federal ID. "I'm Judge Jeremiah Coleman. This is my courthouse." But Lauren wasn't looking at the ID. She was looking at his skin. "You think I'm stupid? You people always got fake badges." Her voice trembled with fury as memories of her brother's death flickered behind her eyes. Jeremiah remained calm, the kind of calm that came from decades on the bench, listening to the broken defend themselves, listening to the guilty cry for mercy. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you're making a mistake." "The only mistake is you being here," she snapped. And before he could speak again, she slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed across the courthouse steps, sharp and humiliating. His briefcase fell open, papers scattering in the wind, court orders, affidavits, and the photo of his late mother that he kept tucked in the side pocket. "Filthy black trash," Lauren hissed through clenched teeth. "You don't belong in Justice's house." Two other officers, Olivia Torres and Hannah Brooks, appeared from the patrol car parked nearby. Olivia smirked, already recording on her phone. "Another one who thinks he's somebody," she muttered. Hannah hesitated, eyes flicking between them, fear and guilt mixing in her face. She was young, only 27, still trying to keep her job in a department that rewarded silence. Jeremiah didn't resist. He simply stared at Lauren, his breathing steady, his heart slow but burning. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat pocket and tapped his phone twice. A faint vibration confirmed it. The secret app had begun recording. His longtime friend, Caleb Nguyen, a cybersecurity expert, had helped him design it after years of watching footage vanish in cases involving police misconduct. The app was hidden, cloud-linked, voice-activated, and impossible to delete. Every word she spoke from that moment on would be preserved forever. Lauren shoved him hard against the wall, pressing her forearm to his throat. "You think your money or your mouth gonna save you now?" she growled. Jeremiah's voice came out rough but unshaken. "Justice doesn't die because you refuse to see it. Shut up!" She slammed the cuffs onto his wrists, the metal biting deep into his skin. He stumbled forward, vision blurred, blood running from his lip, as she dragged him toward the courthouse entrance. Olivia laughed and said, "Hey, maybe he's late for sentencing. His own." Jeremiah kept his silence. He'd seen too much of this world to waste words on hate. Inside, the echoes of his footsteps bounced off the marble walls. He could see the courtroom doors ahead, his courtroom, just 20 feet away. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent his life defending people from injustice, and now, injustice had found him in its purest form. "Get him booked," Lauren ordered as they reached the holding area. Sergeant Daniel Hayes looked up, startled. "Who is this?" "An intruder pretending to be a judge," she said confidently. "Assaulted me on the steps." Daniel frowned but didn't question her. That was how power worked in their world. Assume, accuse, arrest. Jeremiah sat on the cold metal bench, wrists cuffed, suit wrinkled, tie undone. His reflection in the glass looked tired but not broken. Memories flooded back. The day in 1984 when he'd been beaten by police during a student protest. Back then, he'd promised himself he would change the system from within. Now, 40 years later, the system had circled back to test that promise. The phone in his pocket continued to stream live to Caleb's secure server. Every insult, every false claim, it was all there. Jeremiah looked up at Lauren, who stood with her arms crossed, pride glowing in her eyes. "Officer," he said quietly, "I forgive you." The words stopped her for half a second, but she shook them off. "Save it for the judge," she sneered. "Oh," Jeremiah whispered, his voice almost too soft to hear. "I intend to, somewhere outside, in the distance." The first murmurs of unrest began. Someone had seen the commotion. Someone had filmed the slap. And soon, it would spread far beyond those marble steps. In less than an hour, Memphis would ignite, not in fire, but in truth. The kind that burns cleaner and longer than any flame. And at the heart of it all stood a man who refused to let hate win, even as it tried to crush him on the very steps of justice itself. The holding room smelled faintly of bleach and old air, the kind that never quite left government buildings. Judge Jeremiah Coleman sat on the metal bench, wrists still cuffed, the skin around them raw and red. Across from him, Officer Lauren Mitchell filled out her report with the kind of confidence only lies could give. Black male, mid-50s, resisted arrest, attempted assault, she muttered as she wrote, her pen scratching fast. Claimed to be a judge, possible fraud. Sergeant Daniel Hayes barely looked up. He'd worked with Lauren for years and had learned not to ask too many questions. "Get his prints," he said flatly. "We'll see if he's who he says he is." Jeremiah lifted his head, calm but firm. "Sergeant, if you'll open my briefcase, you'll find a federal badge, case files, and a judicial seal. You're making a grave mistake." Lauren turned, smirking. "Nice try. Counselor, those are probably stolen too." Her tone dripped with condescension, and her eyes dared him to respond. But Jeremiah didn't. He knew the law better than anyone in that room, and he knew silence was sometimes the loudest form of resistance. Inside his jacket, the small device Caleb Nguyen had designed continued recording and transmitting. The audio of Lauren's slurs, her fabricated claims, every insult. It was already backed up on a secure server miles away. Caleb, sitting in his apartment downtown, watched the feed come in, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Got it," he whispered to himself. "They have no idea what's coming." Back in the holding room, Lauren strutted toward Sergeant Hayes with a smirk. He was loitering near the south entrance. She said, "Wouldn't show ID. Got aggressive. I had to take him down." Jeremiah lifted his head slightly. "That's false. You struck me without provocation." Lauren glared at him. "Keep talking, and I'll add obstruction." Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, just finish the paperwork. Lauren, we'll let the DA sort it out." She nodded, pleased with herself. To her. This was routine, a quick arrest, a neatly written report, another threat neutralized. She didn't realize she'd just declared war on the very system she thought she served. Olivia Torres entered, her uniform immaculate, hair pulled tight. "Everything good?" she asked, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lauren nodded. "Got it handled. This one thought he could walk right in like he owned the place." Olivia chuckled. "They always do." Her laughter carried an edge of arrogance, masking insecurity. She'd worked years to climb the ranks and often covered for Lauren's temper to prove her loyalty. Beside her, Officer Hannah Brooks stood silent, biting her lip. Her eyes darted toward Jeremiah, then down to the floor. Something about him unsettled her. Not fear, but recognition. Her father had once told her about men like him. Men who kept their dignity even when the world stripped everything else away. Hannah wanted to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. She was too new, too scared, too aware of how quickly honesty could destroy a career. Jeremiah watched the three women, his expression unreadable. He'd seen every kind of witness, every kind of lie. This was just another courtroom, only without robes and rules. His voice was quiet but cutting. "Do you ever wonder what truth costs when you sell it cheap?" Lauren laughed. "Save your preacher talk. You'll get plenty of time to think about truth behind bars." She turned to Hayes again. He had fake documents. "Check his briefcase." Jeremiah clenched his jaw. "Touch that briefcase, and you'll regret it." His tone, calm as ever, carried an authority that made even Hayes pause. Lauren rolled her eyes. "What are you, some kind of lawyer?" "Worse," Jeremiah said softly. "A judge." Olivia burst into laughter. "Oh, that's good. You really should have gone with doctor or astronaut. Judge is overkill." Lauren smirked. "Let's get his fingerprints. DNA. Whatever we need." As they escorted him to the processing area, Jeremiah glanced at the clock. 8:47 a.m. Time moved slowly in injustice. Every tick was a wound. He recited silently the legal precedents she was violating. Graham v. Connor, Terry v. Ohio, Miranda v. Arizona. The list went on. A rhythm of reason against chaos. But his thoughts weren't only on the law. They drifted to his mother, the one who'd taught him that calm was a weapon. And his father, who'd been beaten by police in 1965 and never recovered fully. Justice is patient. Son, his mother used to say, it waits until the truth can't be ignored. Lauren sat at the desk, reviewing her report. "We'll say he swung at me when I tried to question him." She told Olivia. "Self-defense. Simple. Clean." Hannah finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "But he didn't." The room went silent. Lauren turned, her eyes narrowing. What was that? Hannah swallowed hard. "He didn't swing at you?" Olivia's smile vanished. "Watch it. Rookie." Lauren stepped closer. "You want to keep your badge. You'll remember what you saw." "Got it?" Hannah nodded quickly, fear trembling in her voice. "Yes, ma'am. Satisfied." Lauren returned to her paperwork. Outside, the hum of the courthouse continued like nothing had happened. But inside, history was quietly recording itself. Caleb's screen lit up, audio files uploading to secure servers, voice recognition tagging each speaker. He typed a message to Jeremiah's encrypted number. "Everything's backed up. News station on standby. Don't say a word. Jeremiah read it when Lauren wasn't looking, his lips curling slightly. Patience. He murmured under his breath. Lauren turned, hearing him mutter, "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Jeremiah replied evenly. "Truth doesn't need a weapon. It just needs time." She scoffed. "We'll see about that." She walked off to the side office to call the district prosecutor. "Nathan, it's Lauren." "Yeah, I've got one. Claims he's a judge. Fake ID. Resisted. Says he works here. I'll email the report. Nathan Reed, the assistant prosecutor, was known for siding with officers without question. Got it. He said, "I'll handle it. You're solid. Mitchell." She smiled. "Always am." Back in the holding area. Hannah's hands shook as she filled out her own statement. She couldn't bring herself to write resisted arrest. Her pen hovered, her conscience screaming. She erased it, wrote it again, and hated herself for it. Jeremiah noticed. "It's not too late to tell the truth," he said softly. She looked up, startled. "What? You heard me?" He leaned forward, eyes steady. "There's always one who breaks the silence. Be that one." Her throat tightened. She turned away, ashamed. At 9:05. Lauren returned, smug. "All set. The DA's green-lighted the charges. We'll move him to central lockup." But before she could finish, Olivia's phone buzzed. Lauren, you might want to see this." She turned the screen. A tweet had just gone viral. Footage from a bystander's phone showing Lauren slapping Jeremiah on the courthouse steps. The caption read, "Judge assaulted outside his own courtroom. Memphis. Wake up." Lauren's face drained of color. "Who the hell posted that?" she hissed. Jeremiah looked up, eyes calm and knowing. "Truth moves faster than lies now," he said quietly. Lauren stormed toward him. "You did this!" she shouted. Jeremiah simply smiled. "No, officer, you did, outside." The faint noise of chanting could already be heard, voices gathering, phones recording, history turning its lens. The walls of that courthouse had seen many trials. But this time, justice was sitting on the wrong side of the bars. By noon, the courthouse was no longer quiet. The echo of Lauren Mitchell's false report had begun to ripple beyond the walls, reaching corners she couldn't control. News vans parked along the street, reporters swarming for details. Inside, in a small administrative office tucked behind the courtroom, Lauren leaned over a desk with prosecutor Nathan Reed, rewriting the story that was already unraveling. He was acting suspiciously. She insisted. Her tone clipped, almost rehearsed. I approached him for questioning. He became hostile, pushed me, and tried to flee. That's when I restrained him. Nathan, a middle-aged man with graying hair and the weariness of someone long desensitized to injustice, nodded mechanically as he typed. "And the ID?" "Fake," she said without hesitation. "And the briefcase?" "Stolen property." She lied. Probably from one of the offices inside. Nathan stopped typing for a moment and looked up. "You sure about this?" "Mitchell?" Word spreading fast that he might actually be a judge. Lauren's hand tightened on her pen. "That's nonsense. He's a con artist. The internet loves fake heroes." Nathan shrugged. "All right. Just make sure your story doesn't change. If this leaks, it's your badge." Her jaw flexed. "It won't." But outside the office, the truth was already bleeding into the public domain, in a nearby cafe. Caleb Nguyen refreshed his monitor for the 10th time, watching as the video clip climbed past 50,000 views. He'd spent the past hour cross-referencing timestamps, security footage, and court entry logs. The facts were bulletproof. Jeremiah Coleman had clocked in at 8:18 a.m., just 12 minutes before the assault. Caleb leaned back, whispering, "Got you, Lauren." He opened a secure chat with a contact at WMC Action News 5. I'm sending something that'll change everything. He typed, "Verify before you air it. It's real, then." With a single click, the courthouse footage, retrieved from AI camera backups that Lauren thought she'd erased, was uploaded to the station's encrypted drive. Within minutes, the local newsroom buzzed with urgency. The anchor turned to her producer. "He's a judge? Are we sure?" The producer nodded. "Federal ID confirmed. This is about to explode." Meanwhile, back in the courthouse holding area, Jeremiah sat alone. His cuffs finally removed, but his dignity still shackled. A deputy handed him a small cup of water. "Sorry about all this, sir," the man whispered quietly. "Orders are orders." Jeremiah gave a polite nod. "Justice has a way of finding its way home," he said calmly. He'd seen men break under less, but his patience had become a shield forged from decades of injustice. He remembered his mother's voice from years ago, when he was just a boy watching officers beat protesters in Selma on television. "You can't outrun hate, baby, but you can outlast it." Lauren re-entered the holding room, wearing a grin that didn't hide the fear behind it. "Judge, huh? That's cute. You think that's gonna scare me?" Jeremiah looked up slowly. "It doesn't have to. The truth already did." She leaned close. "You won't win this. The system protects its own." "Yes," he said softly, "and unfortunately for you, I am part of that system." Her smirk faltered for a split second before returning. "You're finished. Nobody's gonna believe a man like you over 3 sworn officers." "We'll see," Jeremiah said, his voice steady. "Because I don't need belief. I have evidence." Lauren's phone buzzed again. She glanced down and froze. Notifications flooded the screen, messages from colleagues, texts from her husband, and headlines flashing across her feed. "Memphis officer assaults black judge outside courthouse." Her pulse quickened. What the hell? She looked around, panic flaring. Who leaked this? Jeremiah remained silent. He didn't have to answer. His calm was enough to unnerve her. She bolted toward the records room, calling Olivia and Hannah on her radio. "Get over here now. We've got a problem." In the records office, Lauren cornered a nervous young clerk named Dennis. "Delete the footage," she ordered. "Right now." The clerk blinked, confused. "Ma'am, all surveillance is auto-backed to federal servers." "I can't." "Do it, or you'll lose your job," she barked, trembling. Dennis hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Suddenly, the monitor flickered. A message appeared on screen. "Unauthorized access detected. System locked." Beneath it, a single line glowed in bright green letters. "Truth prevails. CN." Lauren's breath caught. "No, no, no, no." She slammed her fist against the desk, realizing Caleb had beaten her to it. Back in the hallway, Olivia and Hannah arrived, breathless. "What's going on?" Olivia demanded. Lauren's voice cracked as she spoke. "Someone hacked the system. The footage. It's everywhere." Hannah felt her stomach drop. Everywhere? News stations? Social media? God knows where else, Lauren snapped. Olivia frowned. "So what do we do now?" Lauren took a deep breath, forcing her composure. "We stick to the story. We deny everything. Say it's fake, edited, AI generated, whatever it takes. Once this blows over, internal affairs will clean it up." But her words sounded hollow. "Even to herself," Hannah whispered. "People aren't going to believe that. It's too clear." Lauren spun on her. "You want to survive this? You'll shut up and follow my lead." Hannah nodded weakly, guilt twisting deeper into her gut. Back in his cell, Jeremiah's phone vibrated again. A short text from Caleb appeared on the screen. "It's live. Whole city's watching." He smiled faintly. "Good," he murmured. The deputy glanced toward him. "Sir, you sure you don't want to call your lawyer?" "No need," Jeremiah replied. "The law's already in motion. Across town." The protests began. At first, just a handful of people gathered near the courthouse steps, mostly law students, activists, and local pastors. Then the crowd grew, voices rising, signs lifted high, justice for Judge Coleman, end police racism, Memphis won't stay silent. News helicopters circled overhead, inside. Nathan Reed stared at the live broadcast in disbelief. "Lauren!" he hissed over the phone. "You said there was no footage. I thought there wasn't," she yelled. "It was deleted." "Well, it's on every major network now," he shouted. "If this is real, you just assaulted a sitting federal judge." The line went silent. Lauren stumbled into the restroom, gripping the sink. Her reflection stared back at her. A woman unraveling. For the first time, the uniform didn't feel like armor. It felt like a curse. She splashed water on her face and whispered, "They'll forgive me. They have to." But even she didn't believe it. Downstairs, Jeremiah's bail hearing was expedited due to the chaos. Chief Judge Abigail Ross, alerted by Caleb's evidence, intervened from her office. She called the precinct directly. "Release him immediately," she ordered, "and send me every file tied to Officer Mitchell." The officer on the other end hesitated. "Ma'am, there's media pressure. Then move faster," she said coldly. As Jeremiah stepped out of the holding area, the sound of chanting met his ears. Dozens of people lined the corridor, some staff, some citizens, all staring in shock and shame as the man they'd seen in headlines now walked among them in silence. Caleb met him at the entrance, handing him a tablet. "It's everywhere. Sir, full video, clean audio, time-stamped. There's no spinning this." Jeremiah nodded slowly. "Then we let the truth speak for itself. Back upstairs." Nathan Reed closed his laptop, his face pale. "They're going to hang us all for this," he muttered. Lauren barged into his office. "Nathan, you have to back me up. Say he resisted, that it was dark. I felt threatened. Save it." Nathan snapped. "This isn't going away." For the first time in her career, Lauren felt the weight of the badge turn against her. Outside, the chants grew louder, echoing off the marble walls where it all began. Jeremiah paused at the doorway, looking back at the chaos she'd created. "Injustice always writes its own confession," he whispered to himself, then walked into the sunlight, his briefcase in hand, ready to reclaim the court that was rightfully his. The courtroom was packed to the walls, the air thick with whispers and flashing cameras. Reporters filled the benches like vultures waiting for a signal to strike. Behind the defendant's table sat the woman who only 24 hours earlier had dragged a federal judge across his own courthouse steps. Officer Lauren Mitchell. Her uniform was pressed, her jaw tight, her eyes hollow. She looked less like the fearless cop from yesterday and more like someone who'd aged 10 years overnight. Beside her sat prosecutor Nathan Reed, shuffling papers, pretending confidence he didn't feel. At the far end, handcuffed but calm, sat the man she had called an intruder, Judge Jeremiah Coleman. The irony hung in the air like a heavy fog. The substitute judge, Margaret Ellis, presided over the case, unaware of the storm she was about to step into. She cleared her throat, voice sharp. "Case number 217, defendant, John Doe, charged with trespassing, assault, and obstruction of justice." Jeremiah lifted his head slowly, the faintest trace of a smile touching his lips. John Doe. He'd seen that name 1,000 times in his career, used for the nameless, the voiceless, the unseen. Today, the system had given it to him, and he intended to show them what it truly meant. Lauren straightened, her gaze locked on him. For the first time, she looked uncertain. The media pressure had grown unbearable overnight. The leaked footage had spread across every major outlet, dissected by legal experts, condemned by activists, even debated by politicians. Her police union refused to issue a statement. The department was in chaos. Still, she clung to her story. "Your Honor," she began, rising from her seat. This man approached the courthouse in a suspicious manner, refused identification, and became aggressive. I feared for my safety and acted according to protocol. Jeremiah didn't interrupt. He simply watched, every detail of her testimony etching itself into memory. Judge Ellis nodded politely. "Proceed." Lauren gestured toward Olivia Torres and Hannah Brooks, both sitting nervously behind her. Officers Torres and Brooks were witnesses. "They'll confirm my account." Olivia rose, chin up but eyes darting around the room. "Yes, Your Honor." The suspect was acting erratically. Officer Mitchell was justified. Her voice trembled slightly. Hannah shifted uncomfortably beside her. When Ellis motioned for her to speak, Hannah hesitated. I saw Officer Mitchell question him," she said quietly. "But I don't recall him being aggressive." Lauren shot her a glare sharp enough to cut glass. He resisted. She snapped. Hannah swallowed, nodding weakly. "Right. Yes. Resisted." The lie hung in the air, heavy and obvious. Jeremiah leaned back in his chair, fingers intertwined, his expression calm. When Judge Ellis finally turned to him, she raised a brow. "You seem unusually composed for a man facing felony charges." Jeremiah's voice was steady. "I've spent my life listening to people lie under oath. Your Honor, it's almost nostalgic." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Ellis frowned. "Are you representing yourself?" "Not yet," Jeremiah said, "but I'll exercise my right to speak for now. Go ahead." He stood, his posture upright, his tone deliberate. "Before this court accepts testimony, I request the release of all body cam footage from Officers Mitchell, Torres, and Brooks, as per Brady v. Maryland. Withholding such evidence violates due process." The judge blinked, surprised. "You're familiar with that ruling?" "Intimately." Jeremiah replied, "I've cited it more times than I can count." Nathan Reed interjected, irritation creeping into his voice. "Your Honor, this defendant is attempting to grandstand. The footage in question has already been made public." Jeremiah interrupted smoothly, "I suggest you watch it before continuing this farce." Ellis frowned. Confused? Public? Reed's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and his face drained of color. The headline on the screen read, "Full Courthouse Assault Video, Uncut, Verified." Every outlet had confirmed its authenticity. He sank slightly in his chair. Jeremiah continued, "I was assaulted, humiliated, and arrested 20 feet from my own courtroom. Every word, every strike, every slur. It's all there. The footage doesn't lie." But she did. Lauren's face flushed crimson. "He's manipulating this," she shouted. "It's edited, AI-generated garbage." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, but Ellis slammed her gavel. "Order!" Jeremiah met her gaze. "Your Honor, if I may request a 30-minute recess, there's something I believe you need to see." Ellis hesitated, but curiosity outweighed caution. "Granted." She banged the gavel once more. "Recess until noon." The courtroom buzzed with chaos. Reporters rushed to the hallways to update headlines. Lauren stormed toward Nathan, whispering furiously, "You were supposed to control this." "I can't control the truth," he hissed back. "You buried yourself." Olivia avoided her eyes, pretending to scroll through her phone, while Hannah sat pale and silent, staring at her shaking hands. Meanwhile, Bailiff Samuel Grant, a tall, broad man with kind eyes, approached Jeremiah quietly. "Sir," he whispered, "I know you. You're Judge Coleman." Jeremiah looked up, surprised. "Samuel?" The bailiff nodded. "Yes, sir. I worked security for your courtroom back in 14. Emotion flickered briefly in Jeremiah's eyes. Then you know what justice looks like? Yes, sir, Samuel said firmly. And this ain't it. Minutes later, Samuel disappeared down the hallway. When he returned, he carried a familiar object, a long black robe with silver trim, folded neatly over his arm, and a small wooden gavel engraved with 2 words, "Truth prevails." He set them down gently on the defense table. The room grew quiet as a few reporters noticed. Cameras clicked. Lauren's jaw tightened. "What is this circus?" she hissed. Jeremiah met her glare. "No circus, officer, just restoration." When the session resumed, Ellis took her seat, looking flustered. "I've reviewed the footage," she said carefully. This changes everything." She turned to Jeremiah. "Sir, But before she could finish, Samuel stepped forward, voice booming. "All rise." The command, familiar and jarring, echoed through the room. The crowd instinctively obeyed. Even Ellis stood, startled. Samuel's next words cut through the air like thunder. The Honorable Judge Jeremiah Coleman presiding. Gasps erupted. Cameras flashed wildly. Lauren's knees buckled as she turned toward him, her face white as paper. Jeremiah rose slowly, slipping into his robe with measured grace. He took the gavel from Samuel's hand and let its weight settle into his palm. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stood in silence, the embodiment of calm authority. Then, his voice deepened, steady and resonant. "For years, I've presided over this court to uphold justice, not to become its victim. Yet here we are." His eyes scanned the room. Lauren trembling, Olivia frozen, Hannah silently crying. "The truth is not a weapon to be feared. It is the mirror that shows who we truly are." Lauren tried to stand, voice cracking. "You can't. This isn't legal. You're the victim, not the judge." Jeremiah turned toward her. "And yet, here I stand, still breathing, still a judge, still sworn to uphold the Constitution you swore to protect." Reporters recorded every word. Some wiped tears, others typed furiously. Ellis quietly gathered her papers, understanding she had no authority left. "This court," Jeremiah said, raising the gavel, "will hear the truth, all of it. And before this day ends, justice will no longer be a slogan, it will be a sentence." He struck the gavel once, the sound echoing through the chamber like a promise fulfilled. Outside, the chants of protesters thundered louder. Hundreds now, voices blending into a single cry that carried through the courthouse doors. Justice for Jeremiah. The movement had begun, and the woman who once wielded the badge now sat trembling before the man she had tried to destroy. When the courtroom reconvened that afternoon, the atmosphere was electric, half awe, half disbelief. Cameras from every major network pointed toward the bench where Judge Jeremiah Coleman now sat in full robe, gavel in hand. The same steps where he'd been beaten hours earlier now led him back to power, calm and resolute. "This court is now in session," he began, his voice low and steady, each word carrying the weight of 2 decades of justice. "Before we proceed, I want to remind everyone, this is not about vengeance. It's about truth." He glanced at Lauren Mitchell, who sat at the defense table, hands trembling, uniform creased and damp with sweat. Her lawyer whispered urgently, but she seemed too numb to respond. Olivia Torres sat beside her, lips pressed thin, eyes darting toward the door. Hannah Brooks sat further down the bench, staring at her lap, tears silently sliding down her face. The crowd waited, breathless. Jeremiah turned to Bailiff Samuel Grant. "Mr. Grant, please play Exhibit A." The lights dimmed slightly as the court monitor flickered to life. A video began to play, footage from the courthouse security system, time-stamped and crystal clear. It showed Jeremiah approaching the steps with his briefcase, Lauren blocking his path, her hand striking his face, the hateful words spilling from her mouth. "Filthy black trash." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even Judge Ellis, now seated in the audience, covered her mouth in shock. Jeremiah's face in the video remained composed, his calm dignity cutting deeper than any protest could. When the clip ended, silence fell like a curtain. Jeremiah spoke again. That footage was recorded by the courthouse's AI system. But there's more. He nodded once. Samuel pressed another button, and a second recording began. This one audio only. Lauren's voice, sharp and venomous. "You people always think you can walk anywhere you want." Olivia's laughter followed. Another one who thinks he's somebody. Then Hannah's hesitant whisper, "Maybe we shouldn't," followed by Lauren's bark, "Shut up." The recording ended abruptly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jeremiah looked at the three officers in turn. "Do you deny those voices are yours?" Lauren shook her head slowly, her confidence collapsing. "No, Your Honor," she whispered, voice cracking. "But I was scared. My brother. He was killed by men who looked just like you. I just lost it." Jeremiah studied her carefully. Fear doesn't excuse hate, Officer Mitchell, and grief doesn't justify violence. She lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. From the gallery, a woman stood. "Tell them the rest," she called. The crowd parted, revealing a young black attorney in a navy blazer, her eyes fierce and unflinching. Jeremiah nodded toward her. "Please identify yourself for the record. Maya Jackson," she said, stepping forward. "Attorney at law. 3 years ago, that same officer arrested me outside my own office for trespassing. Said I didn't look like I belonged." Gasps swept the room. Jeremiah gestured for her to continue. Maya's voice trembled, not from fear but from memory. "I filed a complaint. It vanished. The footage disappeared. I lost clients. My reputation suffered. But I never forgot her face. When I saw the video of what she did to you, I knew it was her." Jeremiah nodded solemnly. "Your testimony is noted." Maya turned toward Lauren, eyes burning. "You ruined my life because of your pain." "But what about ours?" Lauren burst into tears, shaking her head. "I didn't know. I didn't mean." "You meant every word," Maya cut in softly. "And now the world knows it." Jeremiah turned back to the screen. "There is one more exhibit." The monitor flickered again, showing internal body cam footage, this time from Hannah Brooks. The camera captured Lauren's voice whispering to Olivia as they dragged Jeremiah. "Teach these people their place." The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Spectators cursed. Some stood in tears. Jeremiah raised his gavel once. "Order!" The noise stilled. "What you have just witnessed," he said, "is not an isolated act. It is a symptom of something deeper, of prejudice disguised as protection, of trauma weaponized into authority." He leaned forward slightly. "But the system that allowed this also contains the power to correct it." Lauren covered her face, sobbing. "I'm sorry. Please." "I wasn't thinking. My brother's face. It never leaves me. I thought I saw him every time I looked at someone like you." Jeremiah's gaze softened for the briefest moment. "I understand loss, Officer Mitchell, but when pain turns into hatred, it poisons everything it touches, even justice." Olivia, her facade cracking, muttered, "We were following orders." Jeremiah's tone sharpened. "Whose orders? Hate's?" He stood, his robe flowing behind him. "You had choices. Every moment in that video. You could have chosen restraint. Instead, you chose humiliation." He turned to the audience. "This courtroom is sacred ground. But today, it became a battlefield between the worst of us and the best of us. And still, truth prevailed." He nodded to Samuel. "Bring in the evidence log." The bailiff returned with folders, printouts of messages between the officers. obtained through Caleb Nguyen's cyber investigation. The text exchanges were damning. Gonna make him kneel. He looks like trouble. Don't let him talk his way out. The crowd gasped again. Jeremiah glanced toward Caleb, seated quietly in the back, his laptop open. To the citizens who use technology for good, to expose injustice. I thank you. Caleb gave a small nod, expression unreadable. Lauren's lawyer rose. Your Honor, given the defendant's emotional trauma and years of commendable service, we request leniency. Jeremiah raised a hand. You may save your plea for sentencing. He looked back at Lauren. You said once, the system protects its own. You were right, but not today. Today, it will protect what's right. He struck the gavel once, sharp and final. This court finds officers Lauren Mitchell, Olivia Torres, and Hannah Brooks guilty of assault under color of law, deprivation of civil rights, and perjury before this bench. Sentencing will follow immediately. The room fell silent. Lauren's sobs echoed softly against the marble walls. Hannah crumpled in her seat, whispering, I'm sorry. Olivia closed her eyes, jaw clenched, tears cutting through her makeup. Jeremiah stood again, his voice now filled with both power and sorrow. I take no joy in this. Justice is not revenge. It is a mirror that forces us to see what we've become. I once believed the system could heal itself. Today, I realize it only heals when the truth is spoken aloud. He looked out over the crowd, citizens, lawyers, reporters, officers, all staring in stunned silence. For too long. Justice has been something people of color must survive instead of something they can trust. That ends here. He turned to the clerk. Court adjourned until sentencing. As he stepped down from the bench, the room remained still. No applause, no shouts, just the quiet sound of realization settling in, outside. The chants of protesters grew louder, echoing through the open doors. No badge above the law. Justice for Jeremiah. He paused at the doorway, feeling the Memphis sunlight on his face. For the first time in years, it didn't feel heavy. It felt clean, almost holy, behind him. Lauren sat hunched over, broken, ahead of him. Thousands of people waited for the truth he had just unleashed, and Jeremiah Coleman walked toward them. Knowing this was no longer his fight alone, it had become a movement. The next morning, the courthouse was silent except for the clicking of cameras and the low hum of anticipation. Outside, the crowd stretched for blocks, signs raised high under the Memphis sky. Justice has a name, no badge above the law. Inside, the sentencing hearing was about to begin. Judge Jeremiah Coleman entered in full robe, his composure unshaken despite the sleepless night behind him. The courtroom stood as he approached the bench. Even those who had doubted him now looked on with reverence. Lauren Mitchell sat at the defense table, eyes swollen from crying, her once crisp uniform wrinkled, hands trembling. Olivia Torres sat beside her, lips pressed into a thin line, trying to maintain dignity. Hannah Brooks, pale and exhausted, kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Their attorneys whispered hurriedly. But all three women seemed beyond strategy now. This was the reckoning. Jeremiah's voice carried clearly across the room. This court reconvenes for sentencing. Yesterday, this bench heard the truth, seen the evidence, and witnessed remorse. Some genuine, some convenient. Today, justice will have its say. He paused, letting the words breathe. Before I deliver judgment, I want each defendant to speak, not for me, for the people watching who still believe a badge excuses cruelty. Lauren slowly rose, gripping the table to steady herself. Your Honor, she began, her voice cracking, I have no excuse. I've served 15 years trying to keep this city safe. I let my pain twist into hate when my brother was murdered by 2 black men. I swore I'd never be a victim again, but I became something worse. A bully with a gun and a badge. I destroyed lives because I couldn't face my own grief. I'm sorry. Her words broke into sobs. Jeremiah studied her for a long moment. Grief is not a license for cruelty, he said softly. And pain does not cleanse the stain of prejudice, but acknowledgement is a beginning. Next was Olivia. She stood with her chin lifted, but her eyes red. I followed her lead. She said quietly, I thought loyalty would protect me. I saw what she was doing was wrong, but I didn't stop it. I laughed because silence felt safer than courage. I was weak. Jeremiah nodded slowly. Silence is the favorite tool of injustice. Miss Torres, you had power. You chose convenience. Olivia sat down, face buried in her hands. Finally, Hannah stood, voice trembling. I was scared, she whispered. Scared to lose my job, scared to speak up. But I can't sleep anymore. I see his face every night. The moment I realized he was the judge we were supposed to serve. I don't deserve mercy, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it. Jeremiah looked at her with quiet compassion. Courage delayed is still courage. Miss Brooks, you'll live with your choices, but you'll also have the chance to change. He turned to the packed courtroom. Cameras flashing, reporters scribbling every word. For those who wear the badge, he said, remember this. Authority without accountability is tyranny, and tyranny under the color of law is the enemy of justice. He opened the sentencing documents, the pages trembling slightly under his hand. Officer Lauren Mitchell, 42 years in federal prison for assault on a federal judge, civil rights deprivation, and perjury before this court. Gasps filled the room. Lauren's shoulders collapsed as the weight of the words hit her. Behind her, her husband stood and quietly walked out, leaving the divorce papers on the bench beside her. She didn't look back. Officer Olivia Torres, 22 years for aiding and abetting, falsification of evidence, and obstruction of justice. Olivia's eyes went wide, her mouth trembling as her parents in the gallery began to cry. Officer Hannah Brooks, 20 years for participation under duress, with eligibility for rehabilitation and sentence review after 15, contingent on cooperation with the DOJ investigation. Hannah nodded slowly, tears running down her cheeks. Thank you, Your Honor, she whispered. Jeremiah gave a small nod in return. He closed the folder and looked toward the gallery. Justice is not meant to destroy lives, he said quietly, but to rebuild what corruption tears apart. His words seemed to fill every inch of that marble room. To the citizens outside, this is not victory, this is restoration. The badge is not the enemy, the misuse of it is. The crowd murmured, moved by the solemn truth of it. Then came the sound of footsteps. Uniformed FBI agents entering through the back doors, led by Chief Judge Abigail Ross herself. By order of the Department of Justice, she announced. The Memphis Police Department's Central Patrol Unit is now under federal investigation for civil rights violations. Effective immediately, Officer Mitchell and her co-defendants are remanded into custody. The crowd erupted in applause and gasps as agents stepped forward to escort the women away. Lauren turned one last time toward Jeremiah, her face streaked with tears. Judge Coleman, I'm sorry for what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. Jeremiah met her gaze. Forgiveness is not mine to give, but redemption is yours to seek. As the women were led out, camera flashes erupted like lightning, reporters shouted questions, but Jeremiah didn't speak. He simply sat back, his eyes weary but resolute. Justice had been served, but it had cost something. His peace, perhaps his faith in the system he'd dedicated his life to. Chief Judge Ross stepped forward. Jeremiah, she said softly, you just changed this city. He shook his head. The city changed itself. I just refused to look away. Outside, the courthouse steps, the same place where he'd been humiliated, were now covered with candles, flowers, and signs. Protesters and citizens stood side by side, chanting not in anger, but in unity. Truth prevails. The phrase had become a rallying cry across the country. Jeremiah stepped out into the sunlight, the roar of the crowd washing over him. Reporters surged forward, microphones raised, but he lifted his hand gently. No statements. He said, "Just gratitude," a young journalist called out. "Judge Coleman, what happens next?" He paused, looking back at the courthouse. "Next," he said, "we rebuild trust, one case, one community, one soul at a time." The crowd erupted again, chanting his name. Behind him, the courthouse doors closed as the convicted officers disappeared into federal custody. Inside, the same gavel that had once been a symbol of authority now stood as a monument to survival. That evening, national networks carried the story non-stop. Talk shows debated the sentence. Politicians issued statements, and civil rights leaders hailed it as a turning point. Donations poured into organizations advocating for police reform. Within hours, the Department of Justice announced a nationwide task force named after him, the Coleman Commission for Law and Accountability. Back in his chambers, Jeremiah sat alone, the city noise faint in the distance. He removed his robe, folded it carefully, and placed the engraved gavel beside it. The words glinted under the lamplight. Truth prevails. For a long moment, he stared at them in silence, thinking of his mother, of the promise he'd made as a young man bleeding on a street corner 40 years ago. He whispered softly, "Mama, I kept my word." Then he looked out the window at the crowd still gathered below, candles glowing like stars against the Memphis night. They weren't chanting anymore, just standing, united, peaceful. Justice, he realized, wasn't loud. It was steady, like faith. And tonight, for the first time in a long time, America had listened. 1 year later, the morning sun rose over the newly renamed Coleman Federal Courthouse, its marble steps gleaming like they had been washed clean by time itself. A bronze plaque stood by the entrance, reading, "On this site." Truth prevailed. Judge Jeremiah Coleman stood before it, dressed not in his robe today, but in a simple gray suit, his hand resting on the worn leather briefcase that had once fallen open on these same steps. The air was quiet, respectful. A small crowd had gathered, students, journalists, church leaders, and a few fellow judges, all there to mark the anniversary of the day a system nearly devoured one of its own. Cameras flashed, but Jeremiah wasn't there for the spectacle. He was there to remember. He looked up at the courthouse windows, remembering every word, every blow, every moment when justice had teetered on the edge of collapse. Yet somehow, the truth had survived, and so had he, inside the courtroom. Portraits of past judges lined the walls, but now, beside them hung a new one, Jeremiah Coleman, the first black federal judge in Memphis to preside over his own assault trial and reform an entire department from the bench. Chief Judge Abigail Ross stepped up to the podium. What happened here changed more than this city. She said, "It changed the country, because one man refused to let hate write the final verdict." Her words drew soft applause. Behind her, a young woman stepped forward. Maya Jackson, the attorney who had testified during the trial. She smiled warmly at Jeremiah. "A year ago, I was just another lawyer fighting to be heard." She said, "Today, I run the Jackson Legal Defense Fund, supporting victims of police misconduct, and that's because of him." She gestured toward Jeremiah. "He showed us that power doesn't corrupt. It reveals who we are." The crowd stood in quiet respect. After the ceremony, Jeremiah walked to the plaza outside, where hundreds of people had gathered. Candles and flowers still decorated the memorial steps. A group of children held signs that read, "Justice lives here." One girl, no older than 12, tugged at his sleeve. "Judge Coleman," she said shyly, "my daddy says you made the police be good again." Jeremiah smiled gently. "I didn't make them good, sweetheart. I just reminded them what good looks like." She grinned, clutching her mother's hand. Across the city, things truly had changed. The Memphis Police Department had undergone a complete overhaul. The patrol division, once led by Lauren Mitchell, no longer existed. It had been replaced by a hybrid unit monitored by AI oversight and civilian review boards. Officers now wore body cams with encrypted live feeds, impossible to delete or tamper with. Complaints dropped by 46%. Community trust rose higher than it had in 20 years. The Coleman Fund for Justice, which Jeremiah founded with public donations and settlement funds, had helped more than 300 victims of police abuse rebuild their lives. Hannah Brooks, once one of the accomplice officers, now worked quietly with the fund as part of her rehabilitation, counseling young recruits about moral courage. Olivia Torres, still serving her sentence, had written a public letter of apology that went viral. Its final line reading, "I learned that silence can destroy faster than hate." And then there was Lauren Mitchell. She had become a cautionary tale, serving her 42-year sentence in isolation. News outlets reported she rarely spoke, spending her days writing letters she never sent. But once, Jeremiah received one. It came anonymously, with no return address. Inside was a single line, written in shaky cursive. "You were right. Truth doesn't need a weapon. It just needs time." He kept that letter folded inside his briefcase, not as a reminder of hate, but as proof of humanity's frail hope for redemption. That afternoon, Jeremiah visited the Lorraine Motel, where Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated decades earlier. He stood quietly before the wreath, the same place he'd visited every year since becoming a judge. But this time, it felt different. "You said the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice," he whispered softly. "This year, I saw it bend." He closed his eyes, the wind carrying the faint sounds of a gospel choir from a nearby church. It was Sunday, and Memphis was alive with faith again. Later that evening, as the sun set over the Mississippi River, Jeremiah sat in his office overlooking the city. The noise of protests had long faded, replaced by something gentler: dialogue, policy meetings, reform committees. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, CNN just confirmed. Congress passed the Coleman Act. It's official." Jeremiah turned, eyes soft with disbelief. The law, which mandated federal oversight on civil rights violations by law enforcement, was now national policy. "It's done," she said with a smile. Jeremiah leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Then maybe we've learned something after all." He stood, looking out at the skyline. The city lights shimmered like 1,000 quiet witnesses. Down below, a mural painted across the courthouse wall glowed under the streetlights. It showed Jeremiah standing tall in his robe, holding his gavel high, surrounded by the words, "Truth prevails." He smiled faintly. "Justice isn't a destination," he murmured. "It's a rhythm. You just have to keep it alive." And as night settled over Memphis, that rhythm continued, steady, patient, unbreakable, echoing from courthouse to city street, from one heart to another, long after the cameras had gone dark. Thank you for watching this story. If you believe justice still matters, tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support keeps these stories alive. See you in the next one.